This is Game On, discussing the biggest games and all the latest sports news with Johnny Montalbano and Hank Indictor on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network.
It's showtime, folks. It's episode 35 of Game On here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. I'm Johnny Montalbano. That's Hank Indictor. Hank, welcome. How are you?
Doing all right. I forgot what it feels like to actually come home from the Garden and have a happy train ride after a Rangers victory, but it feels pretty nice, no?
Absolutely. I think that was a much-needed win for the Rangers last night. I got into about the second period, and then I saw they were down 4-3, and I'm like, oh, boy, here we go again. But a nice third period for the Blue Shirts, and they get the win to go to 12-10-5. And I think considering how they've started this year, Hank, I think 12-10-5 you've got to be happy with. And, again, it's early on. I mean, I don't know if you'd be happy, but I think you'll take 12-10-5 and realize that it's early on, and hopefully they can pick it up here as the season goes along. But, yeah, no, a nice win by our Blue Shirts there on Monday night. But Hank, we've got a lot to get into as we come down the stretch of 2022. It is amazing. There's really, and I keep saying this, there is no calm, quiet week here for Game On. And, you know, we're 35 shows in, and every show, I think, has been busier than the last one, it feels like. But, yeah, we have a lot to get to with baseball, with NFL football, with college football. So much else that we could talk about that we're not even going to get into the show today because it's just been that kind of week. But folks, we want to hear from you as well.
Slow news week, never heard of it.
What's that?
Slow news day, never heard of it.
No, never. But it's a good problem to have here as we come down the stretch here of 2022. And of course, folks, plenty of ways for you to interact and follow the show. We're on social media on Facebook and Twitter at Game On ETB. We're on Instagram at GameOn_ETB, and our personal handles there on the bottom of your screen. And of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETB Network. Subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when all our content is going to come out. And you know, we don't have many more weeks where we're going to have this, our college football Monty moments, and of course our NFL picks. I mean, it's crazy to think that we're 13 weeks through the NFL season. Every year it goes by quicker and quicker as we come down the stretch, and we will get into what was a very crazy week 13 in the league. You know, there are a lot of injury storylines, the games themselves. What do we take from them? We got week 14 starting on Thursday, and we'll get into that. Of course, you know, we've got the matchups all set for College Football Bowl and the College Football Playoff. I'm really excited as a Notre Dame fan that we are playing the South Carolina Gamecocks in the Gator Bowl at the end of the year. I might be the only Notre Dame fan that's going to be out watching that game, but you know what? Been outnumbered before. I'll be outnumbered again. So we'll get to that. But Hank, the thing that's been stealing the spotlight over the last few days leading into the show today has been the baseball winter meetings in the off season, and it is already getting underway. And Friday night, I tell you what it looked, and this is what you were talking about, never a quiet, dull day. Well, Friday night, nice calm Friday night, getting ready to wrap up the day and start my day on Saturday. And then boom, the bombshell, the Friday night news stuff that comes out is Jacob deGrom, who signs a 5-year, $185 million contract with the Texas Rangers. And when I first heard of this, I was like, well, I thought of us because, and I think Tom Montalbano over there at ETB and also at the MMA Outsiders had said this too, to watch out for the Texas Rangers to be a team going into next season. And, you know, now they brought in Bruce Bochy's manager. They made some big moves last season with Seager and Semien. And now Jacob deGrom, the latest one to go. 5 years and $185 million. There's so much to talk about this from the Rangers side, from the deGrom side, and the Mets side, and we'll get into all of that here. But, Hank, I mean, this is interesting because this is a lot of money to give deGrom, who's 34, and, you know, he hasn't really pitched much in the last couple of years, and now also he's going to an entirely different league and different division and different league. So what to make of all this? Go for it.
I mean, look, I think definitely this is a move that if you're the Texas Rangers and you're looking to make some noise and bring some fans into the stands, I think that's an excellent move in that aspect. But let me get to the pure baseball aspect for a minute there. I think the Mets made the right decision to not try to match the contract that Texas was offering him. Now, make no mistake, and I said this in my short video, I think over the past few years, Jacob deGrom probably was the best pitcher in baseball. I mean, the numbers will tell you he's won 2 Cy Young awards, and even in the years where he didn't really pitch much for the Mets, he still was giving them a good amount of starts, giving up only like 2 or 3 runs or something like that. Well, and maybe not always winning because the Mets wouldn't provide him with enough run support, but that's a story for another day. But with that being said, the Mets probably did the right thing to not match this. And Johnny, we said this at the beginning of the show. There was no way he was going to come back to the New York Mets after he chose to opt out of his contract at the end of the season. And the reason being was because as great as he was, he had been dealing with injury problems. And, let's face it, he's entering his age 35 season. I don't like the idea of giving that sort of contract to a pitcher who's probably seen his best days at this point. Now, do I think he'll probably still have his good moments for Texas? Sure. But with that having been said, that's a risk that also has some red flags. And if you look at Texas as a whole, it's pretty much him with a bunch of other average pitchers in that rotation. So while I do think the Texas Rangers will have improved, and while I do think, they'll have a better year than last year, I only think they will have improved to the point where maybe they win like 80, 82 games next season because they're not catching Houston, much less Seattle, for that division.
I would agree with you on that, but it does kind of feel like the Rangers in 2023 are going to become like what the Mets were in 2022, where they bring in a manager from the past they bring in Bochy, the Mets brought in Showalter, and they make some of these moves. The Mets brought in Scherzer to go along with their other pitchers. But you kind of feel like the Rangers are starting to build something, and the jury's still out on what deGrom is going to be able to give Texas because, going into his age 34, age 35 season. But I like what the Rangers are trying to do because they are trying to go for it. They brought in a couple of guys last year that didn't work out in Simeon and Seager, but you definitely see them. And I think you brought this up too about how good the farm system over there is in Texas. So they're trying to make some moves here. And when you have, I think when it's fair to say, with the Angels and what they're doing, I mean, we don't really know if, they got Ohtani and Trout, obviously, but nobody else. And we don't even know if Ohtani's going to make it through the entire season there in LA next season. The A's who don't spend any money, literally, no, seriously, they don't spend any money and are really, it seems like they're more focused on trying to get them out of Oakland and maybe go to Las Vegas because that seems to be inevitable. But, the Mariners, we'll see if they could do it again. I know they just made a trade recently where they brought in Colton Wong from the Brewers. And the Astros, I think, are the safe bet there. And if anything, they're only getting better because they brought in Jose Abreu. So I think that's fair. So as far as this goes, I think deGrom, I mean, look, it's great for deGrom because the Mets were not going to give him that much money. And I don't think any team, as great as he's been, was going to go to this extent. And from the Rangers side, it's a big risk, but I think I like what they're trying to do out there in Texas with the kind of team they have. They see what the Mets did with bringing in Showalter. It's kind of similar, not exact, but along the lines of what they're trying to do out there with the Rangers. Now, as far as the Mets go, it's twofold because it's disappointing that, another one of your homegrown guys, opts out. You're not able to bring him back. And I guess the reaction could have been, well, Steve Cohen, he's prints money like nothing. But at the same time, so the reports were that I guess the Mets did go like 3 years and $120 million for deGrom. But you just felt like all the signs were there that he was going to be gone. The talks of opting out, when bringing in Max Scherzer, who was making more per year than deGrom, it just felt like, the signs were there that he was not coming back to the Mets. And it's kind of a bummer because it seems like the Mets may have wasted his best years away. Now, personally, it does stink, but from a business perspective, I think this is smart to let him walk. And now at the same time, though, when you look at the Mets here, the Mets need to now go out and replace. It's hard to replace a guy like deGrom, but what I mean by that is bring in more pieces because now, Taijuan Walker's a free agent. It doesn't look like he's going to be back. You need some depth in this rotation if you're the Mets and just pitching in general. And that's what they did when bringing in Justin Verlander. And we'll get to that in just a second. But just to wrap up the whole deGrom thing from the Mets side, it's twofold. The fans at first Friday night were very, very upset about it about deGrom. But as the time has gone on here, I think cooler heads have prevailed, and I think the Met fans realized that from a business perspective, this probably was in their best interest not to bring him back, because if you're bringing him back, what you're really doing is just rewarding him for what he's done in the past. It's hard to predict what he's going to do in the future, and we don't know really if he can be this dominant over there in Texas, because it's an entirely different league and an entirely different division that he's going into, and he's getting older. So I don't know really how many great years Texas is going to get out of him. And as far as the Mets go, I think that they can, they can replace him in terms of getting more pieces. So that's the thing for the Mets side, Hank. It's twofold, because you hate to see one of your guys go. And there was a picture, and I think you might even posted it, about they've gone from the 5 homegrown guys, or the 5 guys that they had just a couple of years ago, and now they're all gone, which is just unbelievable to think about.
And now 2 of your aces are geriatric.
Yeah, it's crazy, but then you know what? Your next question as you go into the weekend and you go into early this week was, all right, what are the Mets going to do now to fill the void left by deGrom? And remember, the Mets, they won 101 games last year, and deGrom was really did not contribute to much of that, and struggled down the stretch his last couple of starts when you nearly needed him the most. So maybe the Mets are realizing there's something in there that they may have actually gotten fortunate by not bringing him back. So we'll find out. But they had to go make a move, and Monday they sure did, as they brought in Justin Verlander for 2 years and $86 million. And I tell you what, my first reaction to this, Hank, was what a difference an owner makes, right? In Steve Cohen there, because they are not afraid to go out there and spend the money and bring in somebody like this. And again, with the Mets, with how short of a window that they have, I think this is a great move. Now we'll find out if this is going to really pan out. But with Scherzer now and Verlander, this is not the Detroit Tiger days. Maybe they're going to go call and bring back in Doug Fister, Jeremy Bonderman, and all those kind of guys from the Detroit days. Maybe they'll bring them all back too. Why not? Right?
Why not bring in Anibal Sanchez just for the hell of it?
Hey, he can give me 30 starts per year, right? You need one of those guys, and I think Bassett could be one of those guys. And I know he's still out there. And
fun fact: every single one of those pitchers in that rotation has a World Series ring.
Yeah,
not on the Tigers.
On other teams.
On other teams, yes.
That's right. Yeah, because Verlander's in Houston.
Scherzer had one with the Nationals.
Sanchez, I think, was with the Nationals.
Yep, Sanchez was also on that Nationals team.
Yeah.
Doug Fister, I think Doug Fister was on that Nats team, if I remember correctly, but I could be wrong.
I believe he was.
And Rick Porcello with the Red Sox. And Rick Porcello, by the way, just announced his retirement. Can you believe that?
Yeah. No, he actually was in the league for a while, also brief Met too, as well. But yeah, look, it's a good move for the Mets to go out there and replace deGrom. They're going to need more, though. And like I said, the Bassett is still out there, and that's going to be interesting because it didn't look like at first that Bassett was going to come back, and now the Mets supposedly are interested. I guess they've been hearing reports that he wants a 5-year deal, which if you're the Mets, I don't think you can go 5 years. But yeah, short-term, Hank, and this is what this contract really is. It's to me, it's kind of a no-brainer with the Mets. I think they had to do something, and I think this is probably the best guy out there. Carlos Rodon is the other guy, and the Mets are going to be in play for him too. So Verlander to the Mets for 2 years, $86 million. I think for the Mets they had to do something, and I think this is a solid pickup.
Yeah, excuse me, sorry for that, Jon.
You're good.
Add another one for the funny reel. If you had to lose Jacob deGrom, then picking up Justin Verlander, even if it's $86 million, which don't get me wrong, I don't disagree with Nick that it was an overpayment. But with that having been said, you're still getting a pitcher. Now, granted, he's 40 years old, who's probably built differently than most pitchers half that age. So I don't think that's definitely necessarily a bad move, so to speak, but at the same time, it's one where you're taking a risk for sure. And, the Mets needed to find a way to replace Jacob deGrom. And like I said, you knew that they were going to try to go for it, even though, in my personal opinion, I don't necessarily think the Mets are in the best position to do so. In fact, I can go on a tangent about why they're going to crash and burn next year, but we'll save that for another show.
Well, I would say that, if they didn't make this move and they went out there and got lesser pieces, I think that they would be crashing and burning. And because you can't, if you're the Mets, you can't really make a trade for a big time pitcher because you just don't have the assets. The only assets you really have if you're the Mets is major league players. And that would be like the Jeff McNeils, the Francisco Alvarez's of the world. I think those guys would have to be in play. So, but this is, I think if you're the Mets, you have to do this. And I think you got to go out there and make a play for Rodon, or you got to go out there and at least get some sort of pitching, even if it's just some back end pieces, because what's going to happen now, Hank, is having a Scherzer and a Verlander on the team. Let's be honest. I mean, they're not going to make 30 starts next season at their age. You're going to expect them to hit an IL stint at some point. So if you're the Mets here, I think you've got to go out there and continue to make pieces, even if it's just some lower end guys. And Carlos Rodon, I think, is definitely in play for them for sure. And I mean, that would be a great rotation to have and make you feel a lot better. But they've got to continue now. You know what? They've got to go out there now and get some bats too. And for Brandon Nimmo is a guy who's also a free agent, and we've been hearing rumblings about him possibly getting north of $100 million too. But Nimmo's that kind of guy that, he gets on base. He plays very, very good defense. I'll tell you what, I know he's going to make a lot of money, but to me, he's a perfect Yankee. I mean, I say it as a Yankee fan. I would love to have a guy like Brandon Nimmo on the team because you know what? He's a lefty. He gets on base. It's the kind of guy the Yankees are lacking and need more of. And no, not really much more about power. I think the kind of guy that Nimmo is, there are not enough guys in baseball like him. So I think they got to go out and do that, but they got to get another bat in here too. So it's a good start for the Mets, I think, in this offseason, but there's got to be more because, you know what, the Braves are still there. The Phillies are going to still be there. I mean, the Marlins and the Nationals, they haven't done anything to make me think that they're going to take the next step forward, but it's a good start, but they need more. And yeah, there's a risk, but there's a risk with all these guys. You know what? It's either 2 years for Verlander or you would have gone at least 3, if not more, with deGrom. And I almost trust Verlander. And I totally agree with you. Verlander is built differently, and I hate to say this, I think Verlander's durability I trust more than deGrom's.
That being said, and again, I don't want to sound like a Debbie Downer, but let's also ask this, and I want to look up Justin Verlander's numbers from a year ago because they are absolutely fantastic. And you could probably even make the case that his numbers from a year ago were even better than, say, the MVP season. Or at least my buddy John Check, the Tiger fan, says that his numbers from this past season were right up there with 2011. 18-4 with a 1.75 ERA, 185 strikeouts, 0.829 whip. As great as those are, do we think that he is going to repeat that? I don't know. I would not count on that. But with that being said, if you can get at least half that production, that's still not too bad.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I say this, I think he would give you more than deGrom would give you. I know it sounds crazy to say that, and I'm not trying to knock Jacob deGrom, but let's be honest. His last couple of years, he's always been hurt. They won 101 games last year, and he didn't really pitch much. And the games that they needed him to pitch really well, he struggled. And deGrom just never really, I think, wanted to be here after this year, and I think it had to do with the Scherzer contract. Part of the reason why, but they had to do something here. And again, I'll say this right now in early December. I will go into next season and sign up for 25 starts each out of Scherzer and Verlander. But that's also why the Mets need to do more. And I would go out there and I think every team needs one of those back-end guys who eats innings. So, like we talked about, like Porcello, who's retired, like the Anibal Sanchez is back in the day. They need somebody like that because the rest of this rotation right now is Carlos Carrasco, David Peterson, you know what, it's a start, but it's not enough. They need more. And again, it could be Rodon, it could be a couple of these other guys, because they can't really make a trade for these guys. Because again, if you want to start digging, you're going to start digging into your major league talent. And if I'm the Mets, I cannot trade Jeff McNeil right now. He's very, very valuable on this team. Francisco Alvarez, who they're very, very high on, I can't really look into trading him right now. So they have to do it through the free agent wire, even if it's low risk, high reward kind of guys. And they'll do that. You know, Steve Cohen's not afraid. He's not worried about the CBT, the collective balance tax. I mean, the way they're going right now, they might as well just go all in and go and just hit the upper threshold. I mean, what's the difference at this point? But it's a good start. It's a big risk, but I think it's something that had to be done. There was going to be a risk either way with Verlander or deGrom. So you know what? I'll take the lower end risk. And I think, to me, Verlander's the lower end risk with potentially an even greater reward. So I will do that. But what the Mets run into problems with, Hank, and this brings us to our next thing here, is the fact that you still have the Atlanta Braves and you still have the Philadelphia Phillies. And the Phillies only got better, too, as they, on Monday, announced Trea Turner. They signed him 11 years, $300 million. I think this was the highest amount for a middle infielder. Just absolutely incredible. And to me, this was a no-brainer for Philadelphia, who's been looking for an addition over there at shortstop. And yeah, of course, and again, you know, a risk involved with all of this, but to me, this is a no-brainer for Philadelphia to bring Turner in.
I think if we're going to talk about the short term, this is a really good acquisition for the Phillies. Now, again, I didn't really go into depth because all the baseball offseason videos that I made for the Review and Preview Sports YouTube channel were pretty much shorter videos. Again, sorry for the shameless plug, but you know, it's kind of becoming a habit of mine on the show, at least. So
we love them. It's all good.
It's obligatory at this point. But, you know, let's take a look at Trea Turner. This is a guy who pretty much consistently hits around the 300. I know he's got a career batting average of 298, 21 home runs, 100 RBIs, decent production you're going to get in the top of that lineup. And Phillies needed a shortstop. And also, let's not forget, they're going to be without Bryce Harper for a good amount of time because he is still recovering from the Tommy John surgery. Does it feel weird saying an outfielder is recovering from Tommy John? Usually you associate that with pitchers. But in any event, this is one of the better shortstops in baseball. He could also play. You could also put him in other positions. So very versatile. However, let me take a look at the big picture with regards to this contract. As great as Trea Turner is, and as much as I think he could help the Phillies in the long run in competing for a World Series championship, maybe putting them over the top and finally getting their third World Series in their not so illustrious 140-year history. 11 years, $300 million. That's absolutely insane. And let me explain why. Because this is also a player who's entering his age 30 season. And one of the other things that Trea Turner relies on is speed. He's one of the faster players in the game. And, you know, one of my favorite sayings that I've heard in sports is fast will get slower, but big will always stay bigger. And remember the first part about that saying. By the time he's in his mid-30s, that contract is going to be ugly with a capital U, in the words of Jaguar Gator 9.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the production that they got out of shortstop last year. Now, Bryson Scott was their main shortstop last year, who played 127 games.
Like I said, it's an upgrade, but in the long term, it's not gonna help them in the long term.
You know what? You could say that's just the way baseball is becoming. I mean, we've seen that
true.
a lot.
If you want a good shortstop, you have to overpay.
Yeah, and
you know what? That's a typical Dave Dombrowski move. He's gonna come in. He'll help turn around a team like the Phillies. He'll get a really good lineup featuring guys such as Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, JT Realmuto, Kyle Schwarber, and now Trea Turner. And by the way, fun fact, did you know that the Phillies are contributing $1 billion to those guys plus Zach Wheeler?
Yeah, it's wild.
That's what Dave Dombrowski does. He always loves to win now, but eventually there's going to be a moment where the Phillies have a decline, and look where their minor league system is going to be.
Yeah, no, that's true. And one thing you also realize with shortstops as their career gets further along is they don't stay at short. So Trea Turner will probably be, as this contract goes along, he'll be at another position. But in the short term, Hank, to me, this is a move that Philadelphia had to make. They were not getting really much out of shortstop last year. I mean, I'm just looking at the guys who played there last year. Bryson Scott, Johan Camargo, Didi Gregorius, and Scott last year, he was the main guy there. 127 games, hit 234 with 10 homers and 49 RBI. So definitely going to get an upgrade at short. Also Turner, a speedy guy, but a move I think there was a no-brainer for Philadelphia's side. I think they had to do this. Harper's going to be out till probably middle to second half of the season there, and we had discussed that on episode 34. So to me, no brainer. Philadelphia had to do this. Yeah, you know what? There's always going to be a risk with contracts, and that is always why. But you don't ever see this. There's a reason why. I would always believe in front-loading contracts. They don't ever do that, but to me, I think you get hurt less if you front-load deals rather than backload them. But I get why everybody backloads them. But I think I wonder if you ever tried to front-load a contract. I don't think the athletes would agree to that. But at the same time, for the team's side of things, it almost would make more sense. I like this move, though, for Philadelphia, just to definitely get an upgrade there. We'll see. Remember, they really didn't get going until middle to second half of the year, and when Harper came back. So a good move for Philadelphia, a move they needed to make. But at the same time, yeah, there will be a risk at the end of the contract, no question. But at the same time, also, Turner's not going to be at shortstop towards the end of this contract. I think that we saw that last year with the Texas Rangers. They brought in Simeon, they brought in
Seager.
Corey Seager, and Seager has been talked about going to another position too. So it'll happen, but to me, this is a move that Philly needed to make, and maybe Trea Turner is your shortstop, is your DH late as we go further along. Hank, there's one team as we continue here. Well, there's two teams really that have been discussed a lot here as the free agency offseason, the winter meetings are going on right now out in San Diego. And that's the Yankees and the Giants. They're in play for Aaron Judge. It's been talked about a lot. But before we get to the latest with Judge, this also broke Monday afternoon. Really, I don't know what your reaction is to all this. I mean, I put it out there about Brian Cashman, the Yankee GM, getting a new 4-year deal and all the rumblings that have been going on. Look, I think Cashman was going to come back. I mean, when he's out there at the end of the season press conference, basically without a contract, and he's the one that's answering all the questions, not Hal, it's just there's no doubt that to me that Cashman was safe. And I get the reaction from fans. Now this is 13 years now without a World Series appearance and World Series win for the Yankees. But you know what? The Steinbrenner way has changed. The way that the free agency has changed, and the way that baseball has changed in all those years. So I get why they're bringing back Cashman. And to me, I actually don't have a problem with it. Because you know what? If the Yankees had announced Monday that Cashman was not going to come back, by a few days after this announcement, some team would have picked him up. So to me, I don't have an issue with it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of in a bit of a disagreement with you in the sense because, look, while he's made some good moves that have helped the Yankees be competitive, let's be real. You look at where the Yankees have been, I really think philosophically they just aren't all there. And I've already gone on this rant before, so I can't tell you that I'm 100% happy with this move. And I really hope the Yankees find somebody who in 4 years or maybe even sooner than that, if they start to fall apart, who can use analytics the right way and, could actually build a team that, isn't so home run reliant, No,
that's that. And you know what? Let me play devil's advocate. I think Cashman's been trying to do that. Bringing in DJ LeMahieu. Last year at the deadline, bringing in Andrew Benintendi. Here's the thing, and there's no coincidence that those two guys being injured late in the year last year and not being on the postseason roster hurt the Yanks. Now, I'm not telling you that the Yanks, even with those guys, would have gone to Houston, played the Astros, and beaten them in a 7-game series. But they would have given you a better chance to. Not having those guys in, really hurt you. It shortened the lineup up. It they kept Aaron Judge in the leadoff spot, and he was hitting a lot of solo home runs. I mean, look, I'm not taking anything away from the 62 home run season that Judge had, but there is no coincidence that Brian Cashman, who did try to change this team around by bringing in LeMahieu a couple of years ago and bringing in Andrew Benintendi, he definitely was trying to do that. And I think they should go along those lines. I'll be honest with you. If money's not a factor with the Yanks, which it is, let's be honest, I would go out there right now and bring in Brandon Nimmo. I think he is the perfect guy for the Yankees. You know what? Leadoff hitter, gets on base, plays good defense, is a left-handed hitter. Wouldn't it be? Think about next year if you could get Nimmo and Judge. I mean, it sucks that Aaron Hicks' contract is still there, but think about the fact if you had Nimmo, LeMahieu, and Benintendi on this lineup, and then you have guys like Judge, Stanton, and Donaldson. I mean, it changes the whole lineup around. You almost could, I know that Judge is best as a 2-hole hitter, but if I could have a lineup with Nimmo, LeMahieu, Benintendi, and Judge, I mean, that's pretty good if they live up to the back of their basketball cards. So I think Brian Cashman has been trying to do that. And again, there's no coincidence that those two guys, LeMahieu and Benintendi, not being around late in the year and into the postseason hurt the Yanks. So I think Cashman is trying to change the team around. And let's also remember, too, Cashman has swung and missed a lot at big-name guys. His best moves have been the lower-end, low-risk, high-reward guys. That's what's really been, too. And the Yankee way has changed. Baseball has changed. And I don't think that's just on Cashman. I think that's on Steinbrenner, and that's on the way that baseball has become now. So everybody who goes out there and tells me, oh, the Yankees are not doing this, guys, these are not George Steinbrenner's Yankees. It is now, and I don't mean to be mean in saying this now, it has been more than 12 years. We have to understand that this organization has changed their philosophy. And I think they're trying to change the home run prowess. I truly think they're trying to do that. But at the same time, I will not, defend the fact that there also have been moves that he's swung and missed at. The Josh Donaldson trade was horrific. But they are also trying to do that. So if they are really trying to do that, I would go out there and get Nimmo. I really would. And I would keep right now. I know they've got Bader. I know Hicks is still on this team too, but you know what? Brandon Nimmo is an upgrade for this team, both offensively and defensively in center field. And Harrison Bader can be my 4th outfielder if I need him to. So I think they're trying to do that. Obviously, the first bit of business the Yankees have to take care of. Well, I guess this was their first bit of business. So the second bit of business is to re-sign Judge. And we've heard stories about, there was a report from SNY I read last week that the Yankees offer had been 8 years and $300 million. Hank, I know this is the $300 million for 8 years is a significant jump from the 8 years, 217, 230 they were offered before the season. But I'm just going to put this out there right now. 8 years and $300 million is not going to get Aaron Judge back on the Yankees. We've seen it, though, right now that it is going to take a 9th year. And I think the San Francisco Giants are going to do that. I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to go out for a 10th year. But an 8-year contract, to me, is just not going to get it done for the Yankees. If they get him back on an 8-year deal, I will be shocked. I think you're looking at 9 at least. And I just don't know if the Yankees are willing to go that far. And again, that goes back to what we were just talking about with Cashman and Steinbrenner. The philosophy has changed.
Mm-hmm.
So I that's really a big thing here too. I mean, I think if you're looking at 8, I think you're looking at least north of 320. But again, what we've seen in baseball these last few years, and I go back to last year with Freddie Freeman. The Braves had reportedly offered him 5 for $140, and the Dodgers were the ones that went to that 6th year. And that's what I think ultimately did it in. That's why I think if there's a team out there that's going to offer Judge a 9th year, I think he's gone. I really do. Or if it's the Yankees that offer him that 9th year, I think that's what gets it done. So I think you're looking at 9 for gosh, dare I say 360. And again, it's almost like what we talked about at the start of the show with Jacob deGrom here. Age is the big deal here. Judge is 31, and that's what's something you have to think about. If you're the Yankees and you're going to get him in for 9 years, how many years are you really expecting to get the Aaron Judge for?
And it's going to be, and all I know is it is definitely going to be a big risk, and whoever offers him that contract is going to be handcuffed as well. Am I wrong?
Yeah, and we know the Yanks are already handcuffed with contracts too. Garrett Cole, Giancarlo Stanton, to a lesser degree, Josh Donaldson, to a lesser degree, Aaron Hicks, Luis Severino. So they are doing that, and we thought they were doing the smart thing with Severino and Hicks years ago. But I think with Judge, though, for the Yanks, it's different because he's a homegrown guy. Not like, I know Hicks wasn't homegrown, but Severino was. But I think they're trying to do it too. So, it all ties back in with Cashman, we just said a couple of minutes ago. I still think, though, that if the Yanks are not willing to go past that 8th year, I think he's going to be gone. And I still think I still believe, in my opinion, that the Giants are the favorites to land him. And I hope I'm wrong in saying that. But if you see that the Giants do sign him, I think you're looking at 9 or 10 years.
Would not surprise me, considering we know that that's pretty much his home.
Yeah. And then it goes back to Cashman. How do you feel if that is the case? And, you go right back to Cashman and Steinbrenner, and it's like, what is your reaction?
I mean, look, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. I'm just going to put it that way. Damned if you do, because, you're going to have the face of your franchise, but you're also going to be handcuffed at the end of his career. And let me just leave out a few names for you. Albert Pujols, Mike Trout, Miggy Cabrera. What happened to those guys when you invested in them past their age 30 season?
That's right. And I'll say this too, and I might hear this from Yankee fans, but I'm just going to put it out there. If Aaron Judge doesn't come back to the Yankees, this is not Brian Cashman's fault. You know what? Cashman and the Yanks offered him an 8-year, $230 million contract before the season started. And you know what? Judge had it. You know what? They put it out there. Judge, had his option. He declined it, bet on himself in this season. It looks like it's going to pay off. So you can't tell me that the Yanks are not trying to get Judge here. This would not fall on Cashman and Steinbrenner, guys. I'm sorry. And you know what? Again, Cashman has swung and missed at some guys. There's no question about it. But what he's been trying to do with this organization for the last couple of years, to me, I think it's a no-brainer. And you know what? I like what they did also Tuesday morning. They did bring back Tommy Kahnle for 2 years and $11.5 million. I think that's a no-brainer too. You know what? The Yanks need some bullpen pieces too. Aroldis Chapman's going to be gone. They got to bring in some bullpen guys too. So that's, I think, was a good start as well. But Hank, you could tell winter meetings is the first time in 3 years that teams are meeting face to face. So and they said last week, that Jeff Passan had put it out that he thinks that with them being face to face that we're going to see a lot of action. Well, in the first couple of days, Jacob deGrom, Trea Turner, Justin Verlander, now the latest with Aaron Judge. I mean, it's Brian Cashman back with the Yanks. Sometimes it feels like the offseason in baseball is actually more fun than the actual season in season. Isn't that crazy?
It does, doesn't it?
Well, we know why that is. And if you've been following the show, you know it has to do with, let's just say, Gorm.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be that. But we'll find out. Offseason will roll on. I'm sure we'll get some more news. That's it. Yep. If you're just watching Game On for the first time, we do have a phrase. Good old Rob Manfred. And Rob Manfred, who has destroyed the sport in numerous ways that we could spend the next hour and a half on. But, just go back and watch our shows from the beginning. Also watch our baseball. If you go back and watch our baseball preview show, we had documented that as well. That lockout, which baseball will be feeling for years to come. The worst of it, like we said, Hank, it doesn't even really get going until the start of next season. So that'll be that. But we'll see what happens here with the baseball offseason. As you can tell, we love talking about it. I mean, we've already spent about 40 minutes just on the baseball offseason. And just like our show, in some ways, it is just getting started. So we'll find out what happens there. But it is December, and that means that football is coming down the stretch pro and college. It's amazing to think that the college football season is over. The conference championships have happened. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But I want to get to the NFL here because Week 13, Hank, I mean, there's a lot to take from it. And really, before we go into any of the games, to me, the biggest storyline of Week 13 were the injuries. And number one, Jimmy Garoppolo breaking his foot, being declared out for the season for the 49ers, who even though the Eagles have the best record in the NFC, a lot of people were favoring the 49ers to get out of the NFC this year. And now Jimmy G out for the season. Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, being the backup, taking over. Well, all of a sudden now, Mr. Irrelevant becomes very relevant for the 49ers. And also Lamar Jackson of the Ravens hurt his knee. And Harbaugh saying that he's considering him week to week. That's kind of significant too. I think for the Ravens, though, we've seen this now. Last year he had Jackson was hurt, and Tyler Huntley stepped in and did all right. And you know what? Tyler Huntley's shown that he can be capable. Now, he's not Lamar Jackson, but he kind of has Lamar kind of numbers without the running aspect too. So I'm not saying Tyler Huntley's going to totally replace Lamar, but he is more than a capable backup for the Ravens. But Hank, it's interesting. I really wonder how significant Jimmy G being out for the season is for the 49ers when you consider their great defense and the fact that they still got multiple options at running back. I know Elijah Mitchell's out, but they do have still Christian McCaffrey. So they do have some options there at running back. What do you think about Jimmy G?
I think that's a pretty big blow. And, it makes you wonder, are you going to roll with Mr. Irrelevant and Brock Purdy? Or, I hear there's a quarterback that your local Carolina Panthers just released not too long ago. Maybe they ought to give him a look, although it would be interesting to see him somehow reunite with McCaffrey and then be welcomed by George Kittle now.
Yeah, I mean,
I saw this. I was just looking at this meme on Twitter. Like, remember that scene in Mighty Ducks when Adam Banks finds out that he can't play for the Hawks because he doesn't live in the district. He's on the border.
Yes, I do.
And then he goes up to the Ducks, and Gordon Bombay is trying to help introduce him, welcome to the team, and then Charlie Conway is like, as the captain, is like, welcome to the team, Banks. And then all of a sudden his teammate goes, cake eater. And then that's basically what it would be like if McCaffrey welcomes Baker Mayfield to the Niners, it seems like.
Well, see, the reason why that Baker Mayfield, by the way, folks, if you're wondering what the heck we're talking about, yeah, Baker Mayfield of the Panthers did release him. That sure didn't work out there in Carolina. But the fact that I think he'd only be owed $1.3 million if any other team picked him up off waivers. Look, we've seen quarterbacks dropping at an alarming rate. Even Trevor Lawrence and Tua both were hurt at points in Week 13. So I definitely think that the 49ers are a landing spot for Baker because, you look at all these other guys. I mean, who's the backup to Brock Purdy? That's what you have to watch now. I mean, I have to go look at the depth chart, but I think you have to at least consider the thought of Baker Mayfield there if you're the 49ers. Especially if you're only asking for $1.3 million. Look, the whole situation with Carolina, I mean, you're actually starting to see them now. It looks like they're starting to get some sense. I mean, you've got PJ Walker, who looks like he's coming back. Sam Darnold actually did show signs. I know it was against the Broncos, but still, nevertheless, Sam showed you signs. Steve Wilkes has stepped in as interim and done a pretty good job there in Carolina. And you know what? As crappy as the NFC South is, Carolina's still got a shot. I think it's kind of a long shot, but they're going to Seattle next week, which I think is not good. But they have a chance here. So I mean, you have to give Wilkes and them a little bit of credit here. They lose McCaffrey into the trade. They lose the quarterback situation's just been a mess, and they're still in it. But as far as Mayfield, yeah, I think you're the 49ers. I think you definitely have to be in play here for Mayfield. And I think there will be teams also because, again, the way that the quarterback situation has been, I think you have to do it.
Yeah, I don't really know what other alternative you have. And I'm going to say this. This could have easily been avoided. All you just, the problem is drafted the wrong quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, they've
At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, I'm just looking right now at the 49ers to see their quarterback situation here. Well, they're probably going to bring up somebody from the practice squad. I would imagine right now. I mean, I'm looking at their practice squad. Jacob Easton is there. Former quarterback out of Washington. But I'll tell you what's crazy, but yeah, I think if you are the 49ers, considering the talent that you have around you at running back, at receiver, at tight end, and defense, I think Mayfield's got to be in play. And if he's only asking for one, if picking him up is only going to cost you $1.3 million, I mean, what's the risk? I guess the risk would be the locker room. But what other options do you have?
Yep.
I mean, you're going to go into next week or go down the stretch here with Brock Purdy and Jacob Easton.
By the way, only on this show could I throw in a Mighty Ducks reference when talking about the 49ers and Baker Mayfield.
That's exactly right. So the injury bug, we talk about all these teams being favorites, but injuries are a big deal. And yeah, this is very, very significant here. But just, you start with you look at this whole week in general, and it started Thursday night. Bills get past the Patriots 24-10. So now Buffalo is 9-3. New England falls to 6-6. And we saw at the end of the game, we did see the thing that's been going viral is Mac Jones, swearing and looked like yelling at Matt Patricia there. And so the New England now very, very slim pickings here as they come down the stretch of the season. And it's a big win for Buffalo. Now third win on the road in 12 days for the Bills. If you remember, they had one of their games moved to Detroit because of the epic snowstorm they had up there. So 3 wins in 12 days for the Bills as they will welcome the Jets on Sunday in Week 14, what is a huge game for both teams. But, yeah, big win for the Bills there to get to 9-3. And then you look at the, really the early action, not much to really take of. The Steelers get past the Falcons 19-16. Ravens, we talked about them with the Lamar injury, 10-9 over the Broncos. I mean, oh, my God, this game's brutal. I mean, the Denver Broncos, what they are doing offensively is just it's hard to watch. Hank, we're 12 games. Russell Wilson's played 12 games this year. He has 8 touchdown passes in 12 games.
Broncos country, let's ride.
Yeah. It's right. You can't get off the ground. I mean,
oh, man.
Let's ride. I mean, I don't know what you could do about that. But yeah, so Ravens, though, they keep pace. They're 8-4. They needed that with the Bengals going to 8-4. The Packers get past the Bears 28-19. This looked like a scare at first. The Bears were up 16-3. Packers were not getting anything really going offensively, and then second half rolls around. Aaron Rodgers able to get it done. And I said it on the Football Friday picks last week. Very quietly, the Packers. I mean, they're still a long shot here, but their offense has actually picked it up these last couple of weeks. And, yeah, we'll see. They're 5-8 now. Christian Watson's been a big deal for Green Bay. That's really been their one guy here to keep their season alive. Aaron Rodgers has been playing with that thumb injury, and then he had the rib problem last week. He said that it was fine, but he looked all right. And Green Bay stays alive here as they win 28-19. The Lions over the Jaguars, 40-14. A little scare in this game for Jacksonville early on. Trevor Lawrence got hurt, didn't look good at first, but he was able to come back, which was a good sign. But the Lions, Hank, I tell you, the Detroit Lions, they're also alive in this playoff picture, and they're 5-7. I tell you, and it's funny because I'm curious what your thoughts about this, because this was a game that I thought about you because you've been high on both of these teams, the Jaguars and the Lions. So what did you think?
The Lions I was more high on because of, Dan Campbell. And look, I still love the guy. And a certain co-host of mine and a good friend on Big Blue Avenue also happens to love Dan Campbell, although probably for the same reason because, Giants legend, former tight end. But not to mention, I just love his enthusiasm and personality. And I thought this was going to be a much closer game, but then once Trevor Lawrence got hurt, I think that kind of ruined that game for me a bit because then the Lions, blew them out. And, I also was kind of disappointed because now the Lions have an outside shot at overtaking. Excuse me. God, I can't stop yawning. What the fuck is wrong with me? But the Lions now have a shot at taking the Giants, even if it's an outside one. And let me explain how that could work out. Because if the Giants could go if the Giants only win 1 or 2 games down the stretch for the season and the Lions went undefeated, then it gets dicey.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do that, but I don't. But it's a cool thing over there. And Lions just one of their problems has been defensively, but defensively they've been playing a lot better these last few weeks. But their issue's just been closing out games, and that'd be their one thing. They could very easily have been. They could easily have been a 7 or 8 win team by now, which is just crazy to think about. Jared Goff had a good game there. Amon-Ra St. Brown, it was also the first Jamison Williams, their first round draft pick from Alabama, played limited snaps, but it was his first return action. Williams, their running back, is putting up unbelievable numbers. He leads the league in rushing touchdowns. It's unbelievable. You look at how many rushing touchdowns he has and look at how many touchdowns it seems like the Broncos have as a team in 2022. It's just absolutely crazy. So the Lions win to go to 5-7. This game, Browns and Texans, we know about this one. This game really was more about the storylines, the return of one Deshaun Watson after 700 days away from playing football for suspension, and the fact that last year the Texans didn't even use him. Pretty loud boos there. Not really surprised. Was not a sellout down there in Houston. And the Browns won this game not really because of Deshaun Watson. It was really their special teams that really did the job. When you look at it, you had a punt return for a touchdown. You had an interception return. But, yeah, so the Browns go to 5-7. The Houston Texans, they're the worst team in the league at 1-10-1. It's not even close. That was a game I did not even watch a second of. But the Browns get the win in Deshaun Watson's return. The Vikings over the Jets 27-22. I tell you, it's crazy, Hank, because at one point the Vikings were up 20-3, and I still felt like the Jets had a chance to come back in this one. And the problem was the Jets were had to resort for field goals. They just could never get the ball in the end zone. The one shot that it looks like they had late in the game there that dropped from Barrios in the end zone. You know what? The Vikings play close games. That's what it was. And the other thing, though, too, is anytime, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Zach Wilson. I don't care if you're Mike White. I don't care if you're Tom Brady or whoever. Anytime you're dropping back and throwing 57 passes in regulation, more often than not, you're not winning. That's really what it is. And the Jets' running attack just never could get going. I understand why, though, because the weakness of the Vikings is their pass defense. And that's why I actually thought the Jets had a chance to win this game outright. And it just couldn't be done. And now they will play the Bills in a rematch up there in Buffalo on Sunday. This will be a very, very good test for Mike White and for this Jets team. As you know, the Bills will remember that outcome back at MetLife a few weeks back. So they all of a sudden now have a very interesting test here for the Jets coming down the stretch. I mean, they have a challenging finish to their schedule. We know our Giants do as well. But the Vikings win to go to 10-2, and now they have, I believe it's a plus 10-point differential for the season. So they are averaging a 1-point win, I believe, in their 10 wins. It's just crazy to think about. But the Vikings win to go to 10-2.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Hank, our football Giants. Oh boy, a 20-20 tie over the Commanders. Few days now have passed since the Sunday game. Hank, here's what I would say about this. A tie, it feels deflating even a couple of days later, but now when I look at it now in the long term, it actually is not the worst thing in the world because, and I was talking about these before we started the show, let's say that the Giants and the Seahawks end up, with similar 9-win seasons. The Giants will top the Steelers because they'll have one less loss, and that's what they go by. So the Giants end up 9-7-1, and say like the Seahawks.
So wait. Hold up. Let me stop you right there for a second. You mean to say the Giants will be ahead in the all-important loss column?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
You knew I had to go there.
Absolutely. I kind of was baiting you into that, right?
You totally set me up for that one.
But Hank, I know you obviously we're the two biggest Giant fans on ETB. I look at this game and I'll tell you what, I thought Daniel Jones played very, very well. I thought the defense for the most part played well. I think just towards the stretch and towards the end there, Taylor Heineke made some good throws in the fourth quarter, but this was not a great game from Heineke. And I'll tell you what, for the fact that the Commanders had the ball for over 40 minutes, I thought the Giants played pretty well considering that. It just was a bummer that this game ended in a tie because I think the Giants still played well enough to win. But, this game goes to overtime, and then Gano, who needed a miracle there from 58 yards kicking into the wind. It looked like it had a chance at first, but yeah, it's. I will say this: I'm still a little bummed about the tie. It's not the worst thing in the world, and if you would have told me that the Giants would have been on defense the majority of this game, I actually would have been all right with a tie. And it might actually, if we come down the stretch the way things are looking, that is going to be pivotal for this team.
Yeah, no, it definitely was one of the more unsatisfying outcomes of a Giant game that I have seen in quite some time. And, the Giants definitely had their opportunities to win this game. And as far as Daniel Jones goes, the only thing I'll hold against him was the lost fumble right at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
Other than that, I would say, and I'm sure Tom, as in, which Tom I'm referring to, right?
Yep.
Right now. As in Big Blue Avenue, Tom would agree with me that Daniel Jones did everything he could to put the Giants in a position to win this game. Unfortunately, it's not his fault that Darius Slayton couldn't hold on to that one catch later in the game. It wasn't his fault that John Feliciano took that real dumbass penalty later on. I mean, Tom did try to play as a devil's advocate when we had a phone call after that game where that John Feliciano probably was trying to celebrate in front of his teammates, but he didn't realize he was in front of Washington. But at the same time, even if you are going to defend him for that, you have to acknowledge that was very poor situational awareness on the part of Feliciano. So wasn't his fault that happened. And it also wasn't his fault that they didn't have that one more timeout that they could have used on that last drive in overtime that probably would have given them the win. Cause I'm sure they would have gotten one more play off and, maybe Gano would have had that field goal, because other than that, Gano's money, and a 58-yard field goal, that's a lot.
It is, especially when you're kicking into the wind there. But Hank, I'll be honest with you, I totally agree with Tom. You know what? There had to be something else besides the celebration why he got flagged there. Because we see celebrations in the NFL all the time. I mean, look at the celebration in the Titans and Eagles game, where AJ Brown has that celebration. I mean, for all for naught. I mean, these guys celebrate like it's nothing in the league and they get away with it. In college football, you can't. Anytime you're doing some sort of excessive celebration in college football, you're getting flagged. But in the NFL, unless he swore or said something there's no way you could throw the flag in that spot. I'm sorry. And I'm not trying to be a homer in saying this, but we see celebrations in the league all the time, and there's nothing that's called. So, again, unless you're telling me that Feliciano swore or he said something to the Commander's sideline to the player, that's the only way you can throw the flag. Otherwise, you cannot throw the flag in that spot. I'm sorry. And it ended up being a very, very critical play, and I think Dable's reaction was totally understandable in that spot. So I would say that. But, the other thing, too, with this is, you did see some good moments, too. Like Isaiah Hodgins got his first touchdown of his career. That was a good play. But, it was nice to see Barkley also get in the end zone. But, again, Barkley only ran for 63 yards. And I know and I said when we did the picks on Friday, and I did pick Washington to win, was this Saquon was going to have a tough time again against this defense. And the Commanders' defense has always been, at times, has been very, very stubborn and very, very challenging. And I felt like it was again. But yeah, also just the time of possession battle. That was another thing too. For the fact that the Giants' defense was out for as long as it was, and for the most part did pretty well. I mean, you saw Ojulari being back there was good. There were some moments. I will say there were also some frustrating moments, but
I'll tell you what really could have turned the game around was that sack that Thibodeau had at the end. If he was a yard further, game over.
Absolutely. You know what? And I said that I was at my favorite bar watching this game in real time. If that sack happens just a yard further, then you know what? Heineke's in the end zone. That's a safety, and that's the game. It was that close. I mean, it looked like it was very, very close. So, yeah, you look now, the Giants coming down the stretch here. I mean, I know they got the Eagles next week, and then they've got the Commanders again in Week 15, a game that's now been flexed to Sunday Night Football. I don't think the Giants are going to beat the Eagles. I think they can go to Washington and win, and I think they have to. If you're the Giants, you have to get one of these next two. I mean, preferably both, because then you still got to take on Minnesota, Indy, and then you close out the season against the Eagles. I mean, I'm hoping for 3-2. I just don't know though. You know what? The problem they have is a lot of these injuries. They've been doing more with less than any other team. But even those guys have been going out. And, Hank, I think there's no coincidence also that since Wan'Dale Robinson's gone down, it's been, kind of a struggle. Because Wan'Dale was finally looked like he was starting to round into form there, and then he suffers that brutal that torn ACL against Detroit, and it just took another weapon away. And, they've been very thin at receiver to begin with. A lot of, inexperienced guys. I mean, even at tight end, it was good to see Bellinger back. But, yeah, I mean, they're trying to do it with whoever they've got here, but sometimes when you're talent deficient against these pretty good defensive teams or these good teams in general, it just shows itself. But it's still been a very, very successful year. I mean, I think we've come to realize that you know what, your talent's going to only take you so far, but you still have seen a lot of good things, but some things that have to be worked on. But I will say this, and I'll be curious when I watch you guys on Big Blue Avenue on Thursday night. I think that taunting penalty or that penalty on Feliciano, that's just something that cannot be called. Again, unless there was swearing or, some sort of word association or something. I mean, come on. These guys celebrate like it's nothing. So that completely blew my mind. I mean, I almost pulled a Brian Dable in terms of my reaction when I saw that at real time. And Brian, by the way, Brian Dable's reactions remind me so much of Tom Coughlin. I love it. That's why I said, Brian Dable's been the best coach since Coughlin, and he reminds me a lot of Coughlin. Let's hope he has as much success, though, as Tom Coughlin. That's the next step in this experiment. But remember, we're still rebuilding and stuff. We're still doing things. And that's why, I said it on this show last week, too. If I'm the Giants, I don't go anywhere near Odell Beckham. The Giants are not an Odell Beckham player away from being a Super Bowl caliber team. I like the way they're doing this. Let's just continue to go the way it is. All right. So that's what I would go with, too. So, again, just to recap this one, it still feels a little deflating, but the tie is not the worst thing in the world for the Giants against the Commanders. The Eagles gets past the Titans 35-10. Boy, Hank, I know you weren't with us on Friday, but I thought the Titans at least would be able to keep this game close. But, too much A.J. Brown, too much Jalen Hurts in this game. And we're going to get to some Titan news here in just a second. But, yeah, big win for the Eagles now to go at 11-1. And you know what? Again, as long as the Eagles stay healthy, now all of a sudden with Jimmy G being out there in San Francisco, I wonder how that turns the tide in the NFC.
Yeah, no, I had the 49ers, and Nick and I were talking about this a lot when Nick made his guest appearances on Review and Preview. We were both extremely high on the 49ers, and, I think this very well could be conference altering because, unless you want to go with Brock Purdy, you kind of have to go with Baker Mayfield, and I'm sorry, but, people like to say Jimmy Garoppolo isn't that great. And I'm not too bullish on Jimmy Garoppolo, so to speak, even though he's done a lot of winning for the San Francisco 49ers, although a good amount of that could probably be in spite of him. My thing with Baker Mayfield is I actually think that might be a downgrade. I'm even less bullish on Baker Mayfield if I'm being honest. But you have him, and you have the offensive weapons he has, maybe he does better with that team around him. But still, with that having been said, the $1 million question that we're asking ourselves here is, do they have enough to overtake the Eagles, the Vikings, and God, I can't believe I'm saying this, but the Cowboys are actually in the conversation too for the NFC. Remember when we thought the Cowboys were done after they got clobbered by the Buccaneers in Week 1? Peppered Farm remembers.
I'll raise my hand. I said it. I'm not lying. I thought that, Dak getting hurt there, I thought they were going to be in big trouble. Plus, they didn't make a lot of moves in the offseason. I've been totally wrong with Dallas. Got to give them credit. You know what? It pains me to say that, but I will be curious now. You look at real quick here. So the 49ers host the Bucks at 4:25 on Sunday. The 49ers are home. That's going to be an interesting matchup. Bucks on a short week. We always know how good their defense is, but we know how good the 49ers defense is. So that could be a very interesting kind of low-scoring game. Of course, we'll pick that game as well as all of our picks on Friday. See, Hank, now in the short sample size that we saw, the one game, Purdy was 25 of 37 for 210. I think he's got it enough around him to be all right. If he's not throwing the ball 37 times, I think he's going to be okay because, you do have McCaffrey. You do have Deebo Samuel you can use in the backfield as well until Elijah Mitchell comes back. I mean, you've got, you still got a very, very good defense. So I think you have enough there where I think it's survivable. I really do. And we'll find out because Mr. Relevant becomes very, very relevant. But Eagles win. We know the 49ers got past the Dolphins. We've said that, Tua did get hurt with his ankle in this one. We'll see how serious that is for the Dolphins because, that's a team-altering thing there, too. If we got to see Teddy Bridgewater or dare I say Skylar Thompson there as well. I just thought that the Dolphins were running into a buzzsaw, and that was going to be a reality check for their offense there in San Francisco. Seahawks over the Rams 27-23. Geno Smith does it again. But I'll tell you what, the Rams did make a game of this and John Wolford, he wasn't terrible. I was really surprised they announced that Wolford was starting this one. I would have kept Bryce Perkins as the starter because he actually did okay, all things told. But, the Rams need down to 3-9. And I got a very interesting thing I'm going to tell you after we do all these this recap real quick here regarding the NFL draft. But, yes, big win for the Seahawks there to get to 7-5. How about the Bengals over the Chiefs 27-24? Joey B, it comes through again, beats Patrick Mahomes yet again. And I tell you what, the Chiefs had a chance to tie this game, missed field goal, and a big win for the Bengals now as they are now tied with the Ravens at 8-4, and they're getting healthy now. I know Joe Mixon didn't clear concussion protocol in time, but Jamar Chase being back, the offensive line's been playing better for Cincinnati. I think that helps. That'll help Burrow out a lot. And now the Bengals in it at 8-4. The Raiders over the Chargers 27-20, and now very quietly the Raiders have improved to 5-7. As it looks like their offense has gotten going. I tell you what, here's the problem, and I've said this on the picks on Friday. The problem with the Chargers is they're just too banged up. They can never have their full complement of players out there. Mike Williams out, Keenan Allen is back, but what if he goes down? They're still waiting for guys like Bosa to come back. And yeah, I just wish the Chargers had their full complement of guys because I still think they are that good if they're fully healthy. But you know what? They haven't been fully healthy. I mean, I know that's football, but they're very, very vital pieces. And the Raiders very quietly offensively been putting up some numbers here these last few weeks.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the Raiders are finally starting to put it together, although I would say probably they're a day late and a dollar short in doing so, and I still think they made the mistake with their coaching hire, but it's nice to see them finally pick it up. And also, hey, they helped the Giants out a week ago, so appreciate them in that department for sure.
Definitely, that's for sure. Sunday Night Football, not much to really say about this one. I saw, like I said in the picks on Friday, I saw the intro. I saw Mike and Chris, their opening segment. I saw Melissa on the sideline. And then I went to bed. Actually, no, I did see the Colts' first possession, and they were up 3-0. And I was like, oh, interesting, scored first. And then after that, no contest. 33 points in the fourth quarter for the Cowboys en route to a 54-19 win. Oh, God, just pains me to say that. And then Monday night, the Bucks over the Saints, but they had to come back and rally late. Tom Brady, once again, in the fourth quarter, once again, game-winning drives. It's amazing what he does there. And it's a big win for Tampa because now they are 6-6, leading the NFC, that good old NFC South, where the Falcons lost. The Saints now 4-9. And again, we talk about coaching. Yet again, this time Dennis Allen, a lot of questionable moves here in the fourth quarter in this one. But yeah, it's a big win for the Bucks, especially because you look at the Panthers, who are on their bye week in week 13, and they would own the tiebreaker. It ends up being a tie game because they do have the win against the Bucks from earlier in the season. So that's a big win for Brady's squad. As like I said just a couple minutes ago, they will go to San Francisco to take on the 49ers next week. Hank, this was something very interesting. So before we get to week 14, so as of right now, after 13 weeks, this is what the NFL draft order is going into the draft. You have the Texans 1, the Bears 2, the Seahawks are 3 because they got their first round. They got Denver's first round pick, remember, from the Russell Wilson trade. The Lions are 4 because they got it from the Rams. From the Rams. The Eagles are 5 because they got their pick from the Saints, and then the Panthers, Jaguars, Cardinals, Colts, and Falcons round at the top 10. So that's crazy when you look at teams like the Seahawks, who have been doing great, the Lions, who seem to be improving week in, and the Eagles, who are just full of riches. It's why I think this is also interesting too is, so the draft looks like it's going to be a very quarterback heavy draft this year. A lot of guys coming out, as you've seen in these last couple of weeks. And we know the Texans are going to take a QB at 1. The Bears maybe taking a QB at 2 if they don't believe in Justin Fields, but it could come to the point where even though the Giants are going to be probably middle of the pack here, there are going to be quarterbacks in play for them. But I think what last week also showed you, just going back to the Giants for a second, is I think Daniel Jones can be the answer and should be the answer, especially with this coaching staff and stuff. I think he has showed that for the right price, though. That would be the thing. So
let me quote Tom again for you.
Yes.
This is our team. This is our quarterback.
I love that. That should be I think what we should do is we should put that in like a banner and just hang it up in this area right here and put it. Although I can't use that because that's Tom saying. You know what? I think.
I was gonna say you better be paying Tom in royalties for that. Saying.
Well, I could say put that banner there and then just like that, with that quote, and then just dash Tom Scavetta.
Yes.
Hey, listen, you know what? I mean,
I think you'd love that.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? He should use it for his backdrop too. You know what? We'll start with him, and then we'll share the love. That's what we'll go with. So NFL draft stuff's interesting. Hank, some breaking news on Tuesday regarding the Tennessee Titans. How about this that just dropped from Ian Rappaport, that the Titans have fired GM Jon Robinson. Really just came out of nowhere when you look at it, and it's going to be Ryan Cowden taking over for the rest of the season. By the way, Cowden is the vice president of player personnel for the Titans. Wow. I mean, here's Tennessee, who I've given a lot of credit to. I thought they were going into the season going to have a rough year, but Tannehill's been all right. Derrick Henry's been good. Treylon Burks has contributed at wide receiver, but very, very shocking timing and story here.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, you're a first place team and you're firing your GM now? That's kind of weird.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see here why that it's we don't have a press conference here from the Titans just to figure out why this is, but I mean, you look at it, since Jon Robinson was the GM, the Titans had not had a losing season since they hired him back in 2016, and they're on the brink of clinching the AFC South. So definitely a very, very, very odd timing here. I mean, unless we find out more here. I mean, this actually broke while we've been doing the show. Wow. So the Titans were 66-43 under Jon Robinson.
Wow.
And he signed an extension in February. So 10 months after Robinson signed this extension, he is gone. And we will find out. I guess we'll find out if there's some more news to this. I mean, there could possibly be an ETB minute about this. So we find out more, stay tuned to us and we'll give you the details on this. But yeah, some shocking news here coming on Tuesday about the Titans firing the GM Jon Robinson as they are on the verge of clinching the NFC South. They've been, like we said, 500 team or better these last several years. And just an absolute shocker here in terms of the timing here as we come down the stretch of this NFL season. So big story breaking on Tuesday here. And again, no shortage of news, Hank. That's what I would say. But you know what? We turn the page and we get you ready for week 14 of the season. It's crazy to say that. And you know what? We're gonna see a lot of games getting flexed here as we come down the stretch as well, which will work for our Football Friday picks coming up as well. But this is a gimme right here as we get started. Week 14 of the NFL season, Thursday Night Football on Amazon Prime. It's an Al, Kirk, and Kaylee special as the Las Vegas Raiders. They're that offensive juggernaut they've been the last few weeks. They've been winning ways. They are taking on the Los Angeles Rams. They're at SoFi Stadium. And Hank, the Raiders are a 6-point road favorite in this Thursday night matchup.
Well, let me just say this too. We also know who the home team is pretty much going to be. We know whose fans are going to be dominating that building.
Raiders.
Raiders.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I am taking the Raiders in that 6-point spread. Normally I wouldn't, but considering the Rams are without Stafford and Cup, what you think you expect me to take them covering? No, I can't do it.
It's the Raiders have definitely been playing a lot better as of late, but it's funny because I was so confident about them, going into New Orleans, late a dud. I think this is a little bit different here because the Rams are just so talent efficient because of their injuries and stuff. It's a lot of points to lay, but Hank, I agree with you. I think the Raiders are going to get this done, and I think even if they win by a touchdown, that'll be good enough. So I agree with you. I am going to take the Rams to win and cover here to start Thursday night, but I just worry about this being like a field goal. I just don't see how the Rams can win this game outright, but maybe getting this very, very close is a possibility. But the Raiders seem to be playing with confidence offensively. You know what? That's the thing, and I think it'll continue here against a team that's just very, very deficient right now in the Rams. Even defensively, they've been taking hits to the defensive side of the ball as well. So they haven't really had their full potential there on defense. Yeah, I'm gonna roll with the Raiders here to win and cover there at SoFi Stadium and to start week 14 of the NFL season. Again, it's just absolutely crazy to say that already. But yep, here we go. So Raiders to win. That's going to be our pick to start week 14 on Thursday night. Hank, we got one more storyline to talk about before we wrap up. I mean, there's so many other things we could talk about here, but I don't think you want to hear us talking for 3-4 hours straight. So we'll just keep it up with this. Hank, the college football playoff is officially set. We have all of our bowl games set. We're going to go into more detail about this on our next Monty Moment coming up later on this week. But we have to talk about the final college football playoff rankings because going into Sunday at noon Eastern, there was a little bit of drama because you had USC lose. You had TCU lose in overtime in the Big 12 championship game to Kansas State. And all you kept hearing about, we knew USC was going to be done because they had 2 straight losses to Utah and 2 losses without a Pac-12 championship game. That's not survivable. But the question mark was going to be, could TCU, even with that 1 loss and not winning a championship, would that be all right? Would they be able to be in there? And you look at all the way they played in that Big 12 championship game. I mean, I put it out there on Twitter at Real Time at Montalbano NY, and I said this, Max Duggan, their quarterback, who should win the Heisman just based on some of the drives that he had in this game, in the TCU game on Saturday. It really came down to this for me. They played better in that 1 loss in the Big 12 championship game than Alabama did in any of their wins this year. And, Ohio State was going to get in because of the USC loss. The question mark was going to be, could Alabama get in because of the TCU loss? And there was drama going into it, but to me, there was no drama because there was no metric, in my opinion, Hank, where Alabama deserved to be in more than TCU, except one. There was one metric, but you can't measure it, or you can't describe it enough to put them in. It was name. That's it. That's the only thing Alabama had over TCU was name. But you look at their resume this year, it just was not good enough. And what ended up happening at the end of the day was that the College Football Playoff Committee got it exactly right. And we have our 2 semifinal games on New Year's Eve. We've got Georgia at 1, Michigan at 2, TCU at 3, Ohio State 4. So it'll be Georgia and Michigan and Georgia, Ohio State, and Michigan TCU. And to me, they got this totally right.
Yeah, again, as someone who doesn't really follow college football, based on what I've seen,
well, that's why I'm here for you.
All those teams, I would probably agree with that. Michigan, I'm definitely very happy for. I wouldn't, even though I would consider them my favorite, I don't know that I'm necessarily a fan. I think that's a team that really means more to my stepbrother because he's an alumni of that school. But them beating Ohio State for the second year in a row, that was pretty big. And for Ohio State to still make it, even with that one loss to Michigan, good for them. And then, of course, Michigan goes on. They destroyed Purdue, I think, in that Big Ten game. Much deserved championship. And it's funny, remember when so many people were calling for Jim Harbaugh to be fired after, I want to say it was either 2018 or 19. It may have been 19 because they were starting to get sick of him losing to Ohio State. But yet all I kept thinking during this time was, you people are stupid. And you want to know why I thought that? Because this is a team, and like I said, this is coming from someone whose knowledge of college football isn't that much, but I know a decent amount about Michigan. This is a program that historically has been pretty bad. Hasn't really had many winning seasons. You talk about Bo Schembecker or whatever his name is. He's this god of Michigan, but yeah, how many national titles did he win? And then and in my lifetime, I remember Michigan having Rich Rodriguez and then the disaster known as Brady Hoke, who was, my God, he was terrible. So them going to Jim, I don't think you can really understate the effect that getting Jim Harbaugh had on that program. And when they were losing, I thought it was stupid because you hadn't won a Big Ten since 2004. I can't remember who their head coach was that year, but you didn't win against Ohio State since 2011. And from what I understood at that time, you weren't really beating Ohio State with Harbaugh, and you weren't beating him without him. And Jim Harbaugh was by far the best coach that they've had since probably Schembecker. Can't really think of any other good ones, but I know that Rich Rodriguez was a massive disappointment. And Brady Hoke, the less said about him, the better.
Yeah.
So
it's well said.
Now with those wins against Ohio State, you're finally seeing him getting the praise. And all I kept thinking was, shouldn't you have been giving this to him when he actually made your program relevant and actually put you in a position to beat Ohio State that one year? I think it was 16 or 17. Yeah. So good for him with finally being able to really fully turn around that program. I think whatever happens to Michigan in the playoffs, he absolutely deserves a statue outside of that stadium in Ann Arbor.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you real quick.
I make no mistake. I think he's nuts, but I still somehow love the guy because of the way he impacted Michigan.
Absolutely. And you know what? And one thing to watch here too is Harbaugh's name's going to come up again in NFL coaching too. You know what? And I think of a team like the Indianapolis Colts as a team definitely is somebody who could be in play for a Harbaugh.
I mean, he did start there as a quarterback in the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, I think
almost led them to the Super Bowl in 95, remember?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
He had that Hail Mary that was dropped in the end zone.
I do remember that, yeah. I think the one thing, though, Hank, is, it's going to come down to money. He's got such a great thing going on there at Michigan. I mean, if he gets blown away by an offer, maybe. But we talked about this last year, too, after he beat Ohio State last year at the Big House, and that his name is going to come up in NFL coaching rumors again. And the thing is too, it's been so long now since he's been on an NFL sideline. So, and obviously the NFL game is totally different than the college game. But yeah, it'll be interesting. And I'll tell you, Hank, you know what I'm very quietly rooting for in the national championship? I'm rooting for a Michigan-Ohio State rematch in the national championship there on January the 9th. But
how great would that be? Well, it might give me Aja, even if I'm a casual fan of Michigan, but the thought of that, ratings galore.
I'll tell you right, it'll set a record, and I'll tell you, and also because the NCAA they moved the national championship game up a half hour to 7:30 kickoff instead of the 8, and so that'll help too, especially when you have your national championship game that falls on a Monday, which I don't want to go out on a tangent, but I still think that it's such a dumb idea to put the national championship game on a Monday night.
A school night for the kids, and then you have to come to work the next day if you're a diehard fan. Why?
Well, it's college basketball does this too, and to me it makes no sense. College football plays all their games on Saturday every year. You're playing your 2 semifinal games this year on a Saturday. So what's the difference if you play the game? The only reason why you don't want to do it on a Saturday is if they do put it up against an NFL game, and if there is an NFL game on a Saturday, which I don't think there's going to be this year because that is the last week of the regular season. But yeah, I don't know why they do that. I mean, like you said, everybody's still got school the next day. I mean, they may not care. They may just take off anyway. But yeah, how cool would it be to see a Michigan-Ohio State rematch? Now, I'll be honest with you, Hank. I think that is a long shot at happening because I just don't see Ohio State getting past Georgia because Georgia's defense is so darn good.
I don't even think Michigan's getting past Georgia. Georgia's just so talented and lethal.
Yeah, I think even though Blake Corum is out for Michigan, I think they still have enough to get past TCU. But I'll tell you what, Max Duggan, I mean, the way that TCU has played now, they've been the underdog story all season. They are pretty much like this year's Cincinnati. But the difference is, TCU has had a little bit more than Cincinnati did back in the past. But, Blake Corum not being there for Michigan will be a very interesting thing to watch there too. TCU's played a lot of close games. That's something to watch as well. But, I just don't know if Ohio State's going to get past Georgia in one of the semifinals. But you know what? We'll see what happens here. Of course, Hank, if you need something to watch on Saturday this week, you've got Army-Navy. Always my favorite game every single year. This year feels a little bit different because Navy's 4-7 and Army's 5-6. Now, usually one of them is very, very good each year. But, I always love this game for a variety of reasons. Obviously, number one, before football, it's just so cool to see all the military people in the stands, and you see them getting so excited for football. I mean, those guys should have a day to celebrate football for what they do for our country. So, yeah, it's always a cool thing. And number two, this is always the game that goes by the fastest every year because there's very little passing. It's, we talk about, I brought it up earlier in the season with one Justin Fields about the whole wishbone offense. Well, these two teams, I mean, every year they run it some more. I mean, if you see decent passes, I mean, if you see a decent number of passes, it's kind of a miracle. But
is that game going to be played in Philadelphia again? Because I know it's often been played at the Link.
It is going to be played at Lincoln Financial Field, yes. But I believe, if I remember correctly, I think the next cycle, I think Philadelphia only gets it once.
I feel like we usually play it in either Philadelphia or Baltimore.
That is right, yes. Yeah, this year it'll be it is going to be in Philadelphia at Lincoln Financial Field. 3:00 Eastern game on CBS. But yeah, always my favorite game every year. But it's weird this year because both teams are under 500.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean it's always a cool thing. There's always a lot of great storylines when you watch the broadcast. So if you need something to watch this Saturday, that is it. And then we head into bowl season. All the bowl games are set, and then on New Year's Eve we will have our 2 semifinals, and then we'll have our national championship game. So, as far as my Monty moments go, everybody, I will have one this week. We will go over some of the bowl games. We will look back at the last week of the conference championship games. We'll talk about the bowl season, and then right now the way things are shaping, that'll probably be my last one up before the 2 semifinal games because. as much as I would love to talk to you about all the bowl games, I'm not going to bore you to death. I mean, there's some pretty cool ones. I'll be honest with you. I think one of my favorite matchups to watch for the bowl season this year, Hank, is I'm going to be a little homer in saying this. My Notre Dame Fighting Irish are taking on the South Carolina Gamecocks in the Gator Bowl on December the 30th. And yeah, I will probably be the only Notre Dame fan at the bars that day. I will probably be swarmed by Gamecock fans. But let's be honest. I mean, what were the odds that Notre Dame and South Carolina were going to play each other in a bowl game this year? I mean, that's a once-in-a-lifetime experience for me to go to a bar. South Carolina, we know how Notre Dame finished out the year under first-year coach Marcus Freeman. We know how South Carolina finished this year with unbelievable back-to-back wins against Tennessee and Clemson. Should be an epic game down there, but we'll talk about that a lot more in a Monty Moment as we get closer. But yeah, we'll have a Monty Moment this Thursday to discuss, the championship games, the final college football playoff rankings, and highlight some of the bowl games and stuff. And then we'll come back at the end of the year and do another one too. So the crazy to think that'll probably be my last one on a regular basis for college football this season. But that's how fast it goes, Hank. You know what? Just like this episode, it went by real fast. But so just give you a quick rundown. So we got the Monty Moment coming up on Thursday. We are working on this. So it's still in the works, but it looks like our NFL picks this coming Friday will be a crossover special. So we're still finishing the works of it, but it looks like this Friday we will do a football picks crossover with the guys from Empty the Bench. We know I had some people talk to me how much they loved the last one for Thanksgiving. So we'll probably do one for this Friday, and then we'll definitely have at least two more before the end of the season with the holidays coming up. So if you enjoyed it before, it'll be great to do with those guys, and I'm very curious to get their picks, including one of the games this week, as of right now, is tracking to be the highest spread game of the year. So we'll have that drop Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, and then of course we're right back here next week for episode 36. So Hank, we know we're coming down the stretch here. It's crazy with all the stuff, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more stuff that breaks. But you enjoy your week. I will see you later on in the week for the football picks.
Absolutely. It's going to should be a lot of fun with this NFL week, and hopefully our Giants can pull off the seemingly impossible, but I don't think it's entirely out of the realm of possibility.
I don't either. And you know what? I mean, the Eagles are a different team away from home. I mean, we saw that, they struggled in Indy. They struggled at points too. And, like they say, any given Sunday, you never know. But yeah, we'll find out what happens. And of course, coming down the stretch of the season, the college season is just about over. I mean, it's crazy how fast, and before you know it'll be Christmas, but we'll find out. So for Hank and Indictor, I'm Johnny Montalbano. Everybody, enjoy your week, and we'll see you later on in the week for the Monty Moment and the NFL picks, and then right back here for Game On next week.